All right, so let's start. Basically, we're going to be having a Tanya class, and what we'll do is we will start from the beginning and go through the book, but I'd like to just start from the middle for today. And the reason is I want to give you like a little a map of where we're going with this.
Overview?
Yeah, well, more of like I don't know, an overview, more like a destination. You know what the goal is, and I think that will give us a very good perspective about about Tanya. So, Tanya happens to be we call it the Bible of mysticism in the Chabad world, and it's interesting that the way, just as a brief introduction, the way that Tanya was actually put together was. The Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, he was a, you would call a modern day, spiritual guru or, a spiritual healer. And people would come to him literally from all over the world to seek, counsel. And he would counsel them based on the teachings of Kabbalah and mysticism. And as more and more people start to come to him, guess what happens? No time to really, address everyone and their needs. So comes along the Alter Rebbe and he says, guess what? I didn't really want to write this down, in writing, but I see we really have no choice. So I'm going to put together, a book of my thoughts and into writing. And in the introduction, which we'll do when we do the introduction, he makes a request of all his students that have studied, mysticism in depth, that even though it's a book, the benefit of a book is that you don't necessarily have to wait in line. You can always have it handy in every single room, in every single house, and work. You can always have the book, but not everyone could really comprehend the book. So therefore, he's asking his students that have studied in depth. If people come to discuss with you and ask you advice, based on what they read. So obviously, you should try to to help them. Now. Tanya is basically a very, very deep, complex study, and it really, the point I want to make is that, up until I studied Tanya, a lot of things I never understood really well. A lot of things bothered me, and it really was like a transformational shift in really being able to understand myself and being able to understand other people, and it answered a lot of questions, difficult questions that I've had as a youngster. And it really has been a tremendous eye-opener. And obviously, once you study Tanya as a base, from there you can go on to study many, many other things. Now, what I mean to say is like this. One of the revolutionary breakthroughs that Tanya introduces is as follows. And by way of introduction to that introduction is as follows. There's something in which we all know that you want to make sure a system is true. System is true. So, how do we know it's true? So we all know that the Torah was given to us by God, and the Torah that was given to us by God is called the Torah Shebeksav. Means that it was written down. God instructed Moses; it was written down, and ever since then, anytime you write a Torah, you have to write it you copy from a previous Torah, and you monitor to make sure there's no mistakes. And this way, you can make sure that it's 100% authentic. So the Torah is considered the Bible, and it's something which can't be changed or altered. It's like almost impossible because the reader's reading on Shabbat, he makes a mistake. Boom! Everyone has a chumash, and they can catch him on it. So there's no way you can slip anything in or you can take anything out. And today they even computer check it and so on and so forth. Now, the Talmud, on the other hand, originally was written. It was only be able to study orally. The benefit that people always had to study. The downside was that obviously they can stick things in, but the checks and balances was that you always have to go back and trace it back to the 5 books of Moses. Now, in the 5 books of Moses, it's a powerful godly book in the sense that when you study it, you can study it, and every time you study it, you'll find new treasures in there. It has this a magical, infinite way of growing by leaps and bounds. Now, when you study the 5 books of Moses, so first of all, there's 4 different, so to speak, like we say, 4 different lenses. You have a clear lens, you have a pink lens, a blue lens, a red lens. So when you study the 5 books of Moses, there's literally like a certain attitude or way of thinking, 4 different way of thinking. One is something which is called pshat, simple understanding of it. The other one is remez, more like like different hints and codes, etc. Jewish is more like homiletic, interesting stories, etc. And then there's, so to speak, which is called sod, which is the secret of the Torah. So in other words, the secrets of the Torah, what does that mean? That means anything that you study in Tanya or in any way in mysticism, you'll be able to trace it back to the secrets of the Torah. So everything is based on a verse in the Torah. So the Tanya comes with the revolutionary idea, again, which is all traced back to the Torah, and he brings his sources. When we do that chapter, we'll do it more in depth, but just for today, just to mention it, is the fact is that every single Jewish person has an animalistic soul and a godly soul. And again, when we do the Tanya, those chapters, you'll see in depth the structure of the soul and so on and so forth. But the point is, every single person has an animal soul and a godly soul. Now, what does that mean practically? What that means is, what's a soul? What is a soul? A soul is basically the spiritual life force that we have, and that's the driving force, almost like basically the engine to a car. So in other words, every single person operates with a twin engine. You have an engine that drives your animal soul, your animal instinct, which basically is survival. And as if you wanted to walk from here to the other room, or wherever it may be, if you don't have the engine, how are you going anywhere? You're not. So the neshama, the animalistic soul, is basically the engine that will drive you from point A to point B. And we all have that. Without that, we can't move. We all have that. Now, the engine, the animalistic engine, is not bad. It's animalistic. Meaning to say is, it's out for survival. It needs to eat, it needs to drink, obviously it needs a house, transportation, and so on and so forth. The definition of this engine is, you ever see an animal? A cow, any type of animal, right? When it walks, how does it walk? Where's the face facing? Facing down. What does that mean, facing down? So even though that's its structure, but spiritually, what does it mean when it faces down? The only thing it thinks about is itself. Itself. It thinks about itself. It does not think about anyone else. The only way it will actually think about someone else is if there's a vested interest for themselves. So if you want to take an animal and have it do work, it's not going to do the work. It's going to do the work one of two reasons. Either you're going to beat it, so it doesn't want to get hit more, or you're going to feed it. The negative or the positive. But you stop feeding it, it stops working. You stop harnessing it, it stops working. That's the way an animal works. And we each have that animal soul within us. So we each have within us, let's leave the godly soul, we'll get to the godly soul in a minute. We each have within us an animal soul. That means if we want the animal soul to move, you feed it. It could be food, it could be honor, it could be money, other pleasures, anything. So why is it doing it? Very simple. It's called feeding the meter. You feed the meter runs. Doesn't mean bad and good. It could be bad, it could be good, it could be neutral. The point is, it is self-centered. Okay. Now, if God gave us just an animal soul, that would be fine. But God gave us a second engine. And that is called what? The godly soul. This godly soul that God gave us is godly. What does it mean by it's godly? What's the driving force? It's not a carrot. It's not money. It's not honor. What is it?
Love. Creator.
Not love, godly. It basically will do whatever is godly intent is. That means anything that's in the Torah, anything that's a mitzvah, anything to help somebody, anything to make godliness more felt in the world, anything that's a godly act, it's on a high. So certain people get on a high, the animal soul gets on a high from a good piece of food or a good drink. The godly soul gets on a high from helping somebody, from connecting to God, from cleaving to God. So here you have two engines in how many bodies? One or two? One body.
One body.
Problem is you have one set of hands, one set of feet, one head, one mind, right? One heart. So who is, and you can only, for example, if you have a car, right? Every car usually has one steering wheel. Who's the driver of the car? One person. You can't have two drivers. You can actually have two drivers. Can you imagine you had two drivers, right? And one was a teenager, and one was, no one in this room fits that category, but let's say a senior citizen over the age 65. I don't think we have anyone over 65 here. So you have someone over 65 that lives his life, he's relaxed, right? And he doesn't want to go too fast, right? And you have two people in the car, the teenager and the senior citizen sitting in the car, and they both want the wheel. They both want the wheel. Now, why do they both want the wheel? Because the senior citizen wants to go slowly. The speed limit is 50, 32, right?
No.
It doesn't apply to anyone here. We're all under that, right?
Oh. Yeah.
Right? So they want to go slowly, no wild turns, you know. A normal ride. It's not in a rush. If we get there tomorrow, it's also good. We don't have to get there today, right? Even though it takes 5 minutes to get there. There's no rush. A lot of patience. Teenager can't wait to, right? Now the problem is one steering wheel. And they each appreciate strongly the way they drive. They both want the wheel. Now if in the car was just two senior citizens, no problem. It'd be a beautiful ride. Two teenagers, also be a beautiful ride. Two different experiences, but it'll be a beautiful ride. The problem is you put two different people with different worlds of agendas in the same car, and they both want the wheel. Guess what? Each and every one of us has that within us. Each and every one of us, has that within us. Think about that. And once I learned that was like the biggest breakthrough I've had, from a spiritual breakthrough. I realized why some days I wake up and I'm excited to go to yeshiva, and some days I want to sleep in. And so many examples that you can all, relate to your own personal lives. And I understood people. Like, well, one day, someone's all of a sudden wild, and one day the guy's like normal and behaving, right? Because you think people are like schizo, right? You don't realize that people have a lot to deal with. They have two forces, powerful forces. We're not talking about passive forces. We're talking about two strong, powerful forces within you, within each and every one of us, that both want to grab that one wheel. And who gets the wheel? Whoever gets it earlier. Whoever grabs it, or whoever can push the other one out, whatever it may be. So Tanya basically, as an introduction, in the first two chapters of Tanya, introduces these two souls and goes into it in length, which we're going to go back and we're going to study in depth, because it's really important to know who we are. Because can you imagine now you know who you are? Oh, you can say, oh, that's the animal soul talking. It's the godly soul talking, okay. And then once you know who you are, and you know the expressions of it, the way it infiltrates in your mind, in your thought, in your speech, in your action, and again, Tanya goes through at length, which we're going to go through step by step, but I figure I'd rather give you like a big picture today so you can have an outline of the map, and then we're going to take pieces and we're going to go to it in depth. And it's really profound because it literally shows you who we are. First of all, a lot of things we don't even know we had them. A lot of things we didn't even know. Who knew that you had two souls within you? And they're both fighting for one wheel. I mean, this is like breakthrough ideas. And in the reality, it's true. Once a person figures out who he is, now he can start living. You can at least choose to live. Now you can at least choose to live. So, and here is where, so to speak, we call it the test. What is the test to see if you ultimately can create the balance? What I mean to say is like this. The reality is that the godly soul is not going away, and the animal soul is not going away. And throughout life, it's a struggle. We want to be more godly, but on the other hand, we can't ignore, no, in other words, the senior citizen knows he cannot ignore the teenager because he's the future. The teenager knows he needs the senior citizen because that's basically who brought him here, and that's who's basically giving him his whole life. So in other words, like this, the godly soul needs the animal soul. Why? No animal soul, no engine. He ain't going from here to there. The animal soul really wants the godly soul because when he has the godly soul in sync, guess what? He feels happy, he feels at peace, and he feels connected. So they really each need each other. And how do you make it work? And it's really a struggle. According to Tanya, it's a struggle every single day, every single hour, and sometimes every moment. Then Tanya comes along and says, okay, the reality is, where does it play out? Where does it play out? So it plays out, A, in your level of joy, and there's a whole big section which we're going to get to in the process of how, according to Tanya, it shows you how a person can really, really, and sincerely experience true inner happiness. True inner happiness. And when a person experiences inner happiness, it's the biggest gift. I'm not talking external happiness, coming from something external. Now, here is where the interesting part is. Just like we have the godly soul and the animal soul from within, now guess what? Throw into the mix, you're married, so you have a spouse.
The other people's animal soul.
You have kids,
Godly soul.
parents, friends, neighbors, people in your community, associates, business acquaintances. So can you imagine when two people get together, how many people do we have? You got four. And you have 8 people getting together, now you have 16 people.
So 1 and 1 makes 4.
Exactly. So and you see, and the problem is, if you're dealing with one balance, another balance, fine. But everyone is so imbalanced. How do you create balance?
You have to
So
work at it.
one simple way is saying, guess what? Guess what? Who said we have to get along? Right? We can be crazy, but we all know that A, it doesn't work, and B, the Torah sets the bar. The Torah says, no, we're going to set the bar right now. Guess what? You have an obligation to get along with everybody. Not only an obligation to get along with everybody, you have an obligation to love everybody. Whoa! But not only do you have to love everybody, and this is where it gets very, very interesting, the way Torah puts the bar here. Torah says, you know why you should love everybody? Guess what? You know how you should love them? Huh?
Obsessively.
The same way you love yourself. The same way you love yourself. What does that mean practically? When you're hungry, right, you somehow find a way to get food to your system, correct? So you have to, why? Because you felt you were hungry. You have to be able to feel someone else's hunger.
You have to love yourself first.
True, you have to love yourself first. But the same way you love yourself, you have to love, yes, absolutely, you have to love yourself. But the same way you love yourself, you have to love the other person. For example, let's say something good happens to you. You're ecstatic, you're happy. You have to have the same happiness when something good happens like that to someone else. And then you know you got there. So, now why is love extremely important? Because when you really love another human being, that's, so to speak, the test that you got it. That you're happy with yourself, and more importantly, you're happy with another human being. In other words, like this.
Does that not elevate the animal soul too?
Absolutely, sure it does.
Definitely.
Yeah, it elevates everything. So comes along Tanya, and Tanya says like this. There's 3 areas of love. What's the 3 areas of love? One is loving another human being. Now, who's the other human being? Any human being. Not your friends. Any human being. To be able to love every single human being, as the Torah says, v'ahavta l'recha. This is not Tanya's explaining it, but the commandment is in the Torah. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. To love every single human being just like you love yourself. Just like you love yourself. And that's a tall order. That's one love. There's another love. What's the other love? To love Torah. God gave you the Torah. The Torah is a gift from God. Someone gives you a gift, it's a transient gift. Today it's worth something, tomorrow it's not worth anything. And maybe in 20, 30 years it'll become an antique. And it'll become worth something, and then no one's interested again. Right? But the Torah is something which has been around for thousands of years. We all know that when you study Torah, you feel great. When you follow the Torah, you feel even better. So the Torah is what?
One of your loves.
It's the biggest gift God gave you, given to you by God. So we have to love the Torah. And the more you love the Torah, the more the Torah can have an effect on you. And as the Torah is basically like a stranger, how's it going to help you? If you don't believe in the Torah, how can the Torah help you? So it's not just a commandment to love the Torah. It's that when you love the Torah, now you're connected to the Torah and you have a better relationship with it, and the lines of communication are opened, and therefore it will help you, and you'll be able to connect to it better.
And you can use it practically
Exactly.
in the world.
Correct. Then there's a third love. What's the third love? Love of God. Right? You have to love God. It's in the Shema, right? You have to love God. What does that mean, you love God? Very simple. You love God. You have a connection with God, a deep connection. You would do anything for God, as the Shema says, with your whole heart, with your whole soul, with your whole might. So these are all 3 loves. Comes along mysticism. Mysticism says, guess what? Every one of these 3 loves is connected, and you cannot have one without the other. And now it becomes really challenging. People will tell you, I love God. I would do anything for God. My friend, forget about it. My neighbor, my sister, my cousin, whatever. It's something else, right? I love God, but I'm not interested in, I don't like certain commandments, right? I mean, you hear this. Huh?
I like 6 out of it.
Whatever it is, exactly. So whatever the amounts are. You hear this all day long. So what did we say? No. If you love God, then you have to love the Torah. You have to love everyone. Because let me ask you a question: who wrote the Torah? Who gave you the Torah? God. So you like God, but you don't like His product? Who created all these people? God. So you like God, but you don't like the people He created?
So God is in every one of us.
Right. So it means if you don't like somebody, what you're really saying is what? Not only don't you like the person, you actually lost your other loving life, which is God.
Whoa.
Now you have nobody. The people, the Torah, you don't have God. You have nothing. So in other words, love, if it's real, it's to God, it's to the Torah, and it's to all the people. So if you see someone, they love God, right? And they pray, correct? And they're committed to God, but they don't get along with people, guess what? Now, we shouldn't be judging, don't get me wrong. For yourself. If you're on fire and you love God and you just don't like people, guess what?
You don't love God.
You don't really love God.
You don't like yourself.
True, but you really don't love God. Saying that you love God and you don't like the people, you're missing something.
Because God is in the people.
Right. If you love God and the Torah, fine. 2 out of 3 I'm willing to do. I love God. I love the Torah. I sit and study Torah all day, right? And I pray and I do charity and everything.
Yeah,
but certain people I don't like. Guess what? You don't love God. You don't love the Torah. it's like having like a bracelet that has three rings. If one of them is opened, you don't have a bracelet anymore. You have 3 hoops, whatever you want to call them, but it's not a bracelet. A bracelet by definition means if it's made out of 3 rings, this one is connected to the other. So if one of them is opened, or one of them is broken, or one of them is off, there is no more bracelet. It's take it all, or don't take all of it. It's all or nothing.
It's kind of like, though, because the God part of us, if we love ourselves, we've got to love the other two. I mean, it stands, to me, it stands to be because we are, God's children are in God, and God is in us, God's
Right.
in the Torah, and therefore it just follows.
Yes, but it has to be. I agree. In theory, it follows.
Yeah.
And the question is, how do we make it practical? How do we actually live it? How do we actually live it?
Day by day.
By seeing God in everyone.
What?
How do you love a war criminal?
Okay, fine. So,
That's a good question.
yes. How do you love a war criminal? How do you love someone? Yes. We will deal with that soon. That's a good question, and we'll get to that soon. No, we'll get to that soon. But let's first get to the first part. Let's first get the first part down, right? No, and it's a good question. We will get there. So let's deal with the first part. So the first part is, if you love God, and it's real, you're going to love the Torah, and you're going to love the people. If you don't love the people, there's something weak in your love for God. If you don't love the Torah, there's something weak in the love for God. Now, what happens if a person, I love all people, I don't love God? I don't love the Torah. That's very rare, by the way. That's very rare. But the reality is,
all of the people.
the reality is, if somebody really loves people,
Then he loves
he
them.
automatically will love Torah and the God. Maybe he had never really studied Torah, and he never really learned about God. But he automatically, by definition, will love Torah and love God. Okay. So now, the real question is, what is missing in the link, how people can love God, pray and study, but have an issue with other people? How could we love everybody? So comes along Tanya. Tanya comes along and comes with an answer, an insight, and as follows. What did we say before? Every one of us is really a 2-part human being. What do I mean 2-part human being? We have our physical body and we have our soul. Or as we said before, the animal soul and the godly soul. Now, everything that really exists in the world has 2 parts to it. You have the physical component and you have the spiritual part of it. So let's give an example, right? And we spoke about it a little on Yom Tov, for those that were there. You have, let's say, for example, you have lighting Shabbos candles, right? So you have the physical lighting of the candles, and then you have the spirit that it brings into the Shabbat. The same thing also with a human being. Every human being has the physical component of the human being, the person's physical body, which represents a coarse human being that basically is physical and just wants to pursue themselves and their own interests. And we also have what? The godly soul within us. Now, if, for example, 2 people get together and each one, so to speak, just came for their own self-interests, is there really going to be unity? No. At most, you'll have is a partnership. If it works for me and it works for you, we're in business. The minute it stops working for me and for you, it's over. That's called, at most, a partnership. But then, there's when 2 people get together. You have to go, when they get together, who's getting together? How many people? When 2 people get together, how many people are getting together? 4 people. There's 4 forces here getting together. So when 2 people get together, so we have 4 people here. So basically, it's 2 people. Each person has 2 parts. So if the physical is meeting up with the physical, at most you'll have is a partnership. But what happens if you're coming to meet somebody, and really what you're trying to meet is what? The spirit. The spirit of the other human being. So what happens when you're dealing with the spirit now, is the spirit physical? Is the spirit selfish? Or is the spirit basically selfless and really the part of God that we each have?
It's formless, yeah.
It's a part of God. So now, when two people come together here, if you have two people come together, and let's say for example here, there's one parking spot, right? And there's two cars coming for this one spot. Is it possible for both of them to get it? Impossible. So if this car parks here, no, the other car can't get there. If the other one went here, this one can't get there. Could they share the spot? You can't share the spot. However, in the world of the spirit, could two people's spirit take up the same space?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not a contradiction to you. You're not a contradiction to me. Hey, let's do it together. How? You can't explain it in the physical world, because the physical world, two things can take one spot. In the spiritual world, two things could take one spot. So when two people meet, and the two physical human beings meet, there's not going to be any love there. It's not going to be love. At most, it's a partnership. But when two people meet, and yeah, it's the physical bodies that are bringing them, but really what's meeting is the spirit, that's when you can have what? A real relationship.
Oneness.
That's when you can have oneness. That's when you can have real love. So in other words, so Tanya makes a revolutionary statement and says, when two people meet, if to these two people the most important part is their physical body, their animal self, love is not going to be there. Yeah, they'll get along, they'll help each other, partnership, whatever you want to call it, love will not be there. Not going to work. However, if when these two people meet, what's meeting? Yeah, it's true, it's two human beings, but what's really meeting? The spirit is meeting, that's when love can rest and flourish. Flourish. If the spirit is what's cutting together. So Tanya says, when two people meet and you want love, what has to be coming to the table? The spirit, the godly soul. So in other words, like this. When someone prays, it's very possible they're praying for what? All their needs. They're praying for all their needs. For the physical needs. So it's a them, and it's about them, and there's no spiritual aspect there whatsoever. And therefore, when it comes to getting along with somebody else, it's not going to work. Because they never brought to the table their spirit. They never brought to the table God or godliness. It was all about them. So, even though it looks like prayer, you see, but it really isn't. It's them coming with a shopping list. It's coming with a shopping list. It's not really cleaving to God. And therefore, when it comes to the love between one another, what happens? It doesn't work. However, if what they're really praying, they're really they're not bringing their shopping list, they want to cleave to God, they're bringing the Spirit, so what's the problem? They meet someone else, the same thing. See, if you're bringing your physical self, your animal soul to the table, it might look like a prayer, it might look like Torah study, but it's really not. And therefore, where does it play out? Where do you see the proof in the pudding? How you get along with other people. But on the other hand, if you're able to get along with other people, by definition, to be able to really get along with somebody else, see, according to Tanya, it's very simple. Two people cannot really get along and have real love if they're physically coming together. Because it's two human beings that have to get together, and they have to be in sync. If I'm here and you're here, and it's the physical parts, there's no way you can't create sync. The only way you can create sync, if you leave the bodies behind, conceptually, and the spirit meets. And the spirit you can sync up. So once the spirit is syncing up, then you can love God, right? You can love the Torah, you can love another human being. It doesn't make a difference who the person is. So the real question is, when you're coming to the table, who is coming to the table? Is it your physical self?
Or the godly.
Or is it the godly part? If it's the physical part, you might be successful, you might be conquer, you might be able to do that, whatever you're going to do. Real love is not going to be there. It's impossible. You want real love? Leave your physical body out. Leave your animal soul out. Show up spiritually, and now we're talking love. And now we're talking relationships. And once that's there, love will be on all levels. With God, with Torah study, with the other human being. Think about it practically. You sit down with another human being, and it's all about you. Where's the room for somebody else? There isn't. Say that he's trying to study Torah, but you have all your ideas, what Torah should have been written like. You ever sit down, I teach classes. So certain people, they know all the answers, they have all the questions, and they don't listen for a minute. You know what happens after the class? They don't learn anything. How can you learn something if you only wanted to hear yourself in class? You come to pray, the prayer service is boring. Sure, it was boring. You never emptied out the vessel. Come with an empty vessel, you'll walk away with something. You might not always walk away with a full cup, you'll walk away with something. But if you didn't walk away with something, it's only because the vessel wasn't empty. If you have a full cup, how are you putting something in there? Get rid of the cup, the stuff that's in the cup, sit in and you'll get something. If you have a full cup and you put it outside, is more water going to go in there? If you have an empty cup, even though it's dry, but eventually when it rains, you'll get filled up. You have to pray hard, but eventually it'll be filled up. So it almost puts down a very, very simple solution or simple remedy or simple plan. You want real love in your life? Now, it's love with yourself, love with a spouse, a child, a parent, a friend, love across the board. God, Torah. You want love? Get the body out, get the animal soul out, and you're here for one thing. The godly soul is here. Once the godly soul is here, the sky's the limit. Based on that, who can you love? You can love anybody. In other words, it's the other person is really never the problem. It's really, when you're coming in, are you pushing everyone out? Right? Or are you coming in an empty vessel? Here's a famous story. This guy comes to the rabbi complaining. He says, Rabbi, everybody in the synagogue is bothering me. Moshe, Chaim, Sarah, Rachel, everybody. He hasn't showed everybody. Right? I mean, everyone's a problem. Everybody in the community is a problem. And he has legitimate reasons. He has legitimate reasons why everyone's like, it's not working out with everybody. And everyone's always, the other guy's at fault. And he has valid excuses. What do you do with a guy like that? So the rabbi said, very simple. The rabbi said to him, nicely, who asked you to spread yourself out all over the shul that everyone's a problem? You know what I mean? You took up everyone's seat and everyone's telling you they need this place. Maybe if you had like one seat rather than have your stuff all over the place, no one would be like bothering you. So usually when you have an issue with everybody or whoever it may be, it's usually because you basically there's too much of you there. I don't mean the spiritual, physical part of you. Now, so that's basically the first part of the 32nd chapter of Tanya, where the Alter introduces this revolutionary concept to allow yourself to tone down the physical, tone down the animal soul, and bring in the spirit. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people go through life, because you need to survive, with becoming machines. Machines of what? Of producing. And because you become a machine of producing, you forget about the spirit. Now, you might become a good production machine. You'll work hard, and you'll study hard, and you'll amass stuff, and you'll achieve stuff, etc. Guess what happens? It's all about you. And you forget that you have a godly soul. And you forget humility. And then what happens? You can't get along with anybody. And that's why it's important as you educate yourself, and as you got to practice humility, and practice the spirituality and bring in the godliness. This way, you can be successful, but also be able to get along with anybody and everybody. Could you imagine if you were able to be friendly with anybody in the world? I mean, think about this. You think could you think it's possible?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's possible. But it's one simple ingredient. You don't need to have 20 different languages and recipes and remedies. If you basically just open up, guess what happens? The other person's opened up to you. Now, let's talk about the second issue. And here it gets a little, I wouldn't say complicated, but here it gets a little more involved. And that goes as follows. Obviously, from our part, from my part, from everyone's part, I love everybody. Everyone's wonderful. What do you mean? Why? Because God created them all. Who am I not going to like? God created everybody and everything. Remember, the minute you say, I don't like this person, what really you're saying is, I don't like the Creator. I don't like God.
I don't like me either.
And you don't like yourself either, because you have a part of you in that person.
That's right.
But now, here comes a real issue. Let's say somebody is not behaving appropriately. And there could be extremes. 1 to 10, from a 1 to all the way, up to a 10, what's going on, for example, right now in Israel and so on and so forth, in other parts of the world. So the question is very simple. Do you love them because God created them, or do you not love them? Like, do you love a terrorist that just went ahead and, God forbid, killed somebody? Whether the person's related to you or not, everyone's related to us. Everyone we love, right? So what do you do with somebody that's being destructive? And again, it could be from a simple thing to totally out of hand. So Tanya comes along and it says like this. You have to be able to separate. What do you mean separate? You have to be able to separate between the person and the act. God created every single person, and therefore you have to still respect and love every single person. The person that did the terrible act, who created that person? God. So the person has to still be loved. The actions of the person is not okay. And that is something, not only you don't have to love, the actions are wrong, and that part you actually have to temporarily hate. And I say temporarily because Tanya says temporarily hate, and I'll explain in a minute why. The actions you have to hate. If someone does something which is against Jewish law, secular law, against moralities, against ethics, you hate the act. What do you mean you did something like that? It's against law. It's against Jewish law. It's against ethics. It's against society rules, and so on and so forth. And that part you have to hate. Temporarily. I'll explain in a minute why temporarily. So they make a clear distinction between people. You love everybody because God created them. And you're really creating the godliness in every single person. How can you hate there's no God in that person? How would they even move? However, the act, since God gave us freedom of choice, just like that person did something bad, we can do bad things too. We have freedom of choice. There's no guarantee. You know when the guarantee that you're okay is when? After 120. Then there's a guarantee. But until, Talmud says, don't be assured in yourself that you made a home run. 120, you made a home. Why? Because at any moment, you have freedom of choice, and we have the evil inclination within us that can, so to speak, cause us to take a left turn and do the wrong thing. Now, so comes along Tanya, and Tanya says what? You have to hate the act. Now, if you notice I said you have to temporarily hate the act. Why is it temporarily hate the act? Because Tanya says what happens is, there's a fine line. There's the person, and there's the act. So the person is good. And you love all the people. The action, or actions, are no good. Now, if it's not a good act, if you love the act, guess what happens? That's not good. You eventually do it. Oh, I love that act. Let's do it. Let's kill people. No way. That act you don't love. Now, obviously you have to hate it. But when we say temporarily hate it, and you have to temporarily hate it, mean to say is that the person that did a bad act, you temporarily hate the act. You make a statement, the act is no good. But immediately, you have to pull in something which is called rachamim. Rachamim is compassion. And you have to bring in compassion to the person and to the act and immediately elevate it. Because what happens if you spend too much time hating the act, the hate will drift over to the person, and you're going to lose the fine line, and you're going to go from hating the act to hating the person, hating the nation, hating the community, and it's going to be a disaster. And now you got involved in hate of human beings that God created. So the hate has to be limited to the act, has to be defined, but you have to right away bring in compassion. What means compassion? What means compassion? Compassion means to be able to judge the person that maybe, whatever not the excuse the act. The act is always wrong. But, try to have compassion on the person. Maybe he had a hard day, maybe whatever he's going through. And this way you're able to hopefully elevate the person, and the person can turn around and continue doing what? Good acts versus negative acts. Not an easy thing to do, right? What?
What if they keep doing it?
More compassion. More compassion.
In Yiddish it's Rachmanis.
What do you think? Crying and tears are. The idea is to elevate the negative spots that are there. In other words, when someone does a negative act, if the person's good, why do they do a negative act? If the person's a good person, why do they do a negative act? Think about it. If the person's a good person, why do they do a negative act? I'm sorry, what?
Looking for attention.
Well,
So
there is deviant behavior.
No. Again, if the person by definition is a good person and they did a bad act, you have to ask, why did they act? Now, whatever you're going to say, all these reasons, ultimately, who is doing the act? Is it the essence of the person or the external part of the person?
Animals.
It's the external part of the person. Because the essence of the person is good, it always is good, it always will be good. It gets covered up, right? It gets covered up. Now, in other words like this. Let's say you have a natural stone, right? Take, for example, a diamond. A natural diamond that's beautiful, clear, right? You can see right through it. It's a perfect, beautiful piece, correct? Beautiful piece. And it's worth, let's say, let's use a number when it's excited, $100 million, right? Beautiful piece. Every woman would dream of having it, and every man would dream of buying it for their spouse, for their wife, right? Beautiful diamond. Now the diamond gets dirty, and it gets muddy, and it smells actually, the dirt. So let me ask you a question. Would you throw away that diamond because it got dirty? You actually look like an idiot, even suggesting it. Rabbi, what's wrong with you, right? But it got dirty, it's muddy, and it smells.
Let us clean it.
Huh?
Let us clean it.
Yeah, but it smells and it's dirty. Why? Throw it out. The answer is because a diamond you don't throw out. It's very simple. You don't throw out a diamond. The dirt you got to get rid of. You got to wash it, you got to clean it. You have to use bleach, whatever it takes to get the dirt off. So the question is, what do you mean? But throw out the diamond, and the answer is, again, keeps on going back to the same point, because a diamond is a treasure, and it's one of a kind, and it's worth $100 million, and it's a beautiful piece, and that diamond you don't throw out. Yeah, you got to clean it, and you got to wash it, and you got to desanitize it, whatever it may be. Now, when you do that, you scream at the diamond? No. You get rid of the dirt, and the diamond's shining again. It's the same thing with a human being. A human being, every human being, is just like a diamond. Every time you do a bad act, it's like a diamond getting dirty. So, every time they do a bad act, it's like the dirt on the diamond.
But only
That's a good analogy.
Only himself is able to clean it, and I am not able to clean others, or other one cannot clean my dirt.
That's fine, but we're talking right now about the diamond, the dirt. Let's talk about the human being and the dirt. So when a person does bad acts, when a diamond keeps getting dirtier and dirtier, would anybody throw it away? Not if it belongs to you, not if you worked your whole life for it. It's your diamond. You got to keep on cleaning it. So you're not upset at the diamond, you're upset the dirt got on there, right? You wash it off and get rid of it. And guess what? The diamond's shining again. The same thing also every human being. Every single human being is a diamond. And if you look at every single human being as a diamond, how do you look at people? Like a diamond. And you smile like you smile at that fancy diamond. And when it gets dirty, ooh, quick, let's wash it off, right? Make believe no one saw it, it got dirty. I'm not going to tell you when it got dirty. Why would I tell someone, right? So you want to wash it off as quick as possible. And that is basically the essence of loving people. If you love people, that means you view them as a diamond.
That's right.
If you don't love them, you unfortunately don't know what the value of a human being is. That's the reality. In other words,
Bath.
huh?
Give the human being a bath, see what you get.
Yeah.
No, and I'll tell you, there's a story, we'll finish off with a good story, that the Rabbi would give out, every single Sunday, he would stand in line for hours. Hours. And he was not a youngster. And people would come, every Sunday he would stand for hours and give them dollars. And wasn't feeling well. Someone said to him, Rabbi, you're sitting for hours. I mean, I just don't get how you don't get tired. Me, for 20 minutes, I'd be tired, standing on my feet. Why don't you sit down, or why don't you take a break? And the Rabbi responded with an analogy which is always better than giving a response. He says, when you count diamonds, you don't get tired. Now think about that.
Counting diamonds.
You're counting diamonds. So when you view another human being, and the reason we're using diamonds, because that's people get excited about diamonds, the value, the beauty, whatever. But why can't you have the same excitement about human beings?
Sure.
Human beings, every single human being is a diamond. Yeah, the axe sometimes get dirty. So what? Wash it off, and the diamond's shining again. It's not a big deal.
It's called forgiveness.
Fine, all these terminologies. So you're saying like water is like forgiveness, and the bleach is like letting go. Whatever names you want to give to it, but the message is very, very clear. If you view spouse, parents, children, friends, workers as what? The way we view a diamond. Guess what? You'd be smiling at them. You'd be lucky to be in their presence. They're precious. Exactly. They do a bad act, so you don't all of a sudden you're throwing out the person. No, hey, go take a shower. It's very simple. You know what I mean? Or take a shower yourself. Maybe you'll see things differently, right? Think about it. When you clean a diamond, you got to think, who takes a shower? The diamond takes a shower, you take a shower. You both take the shower. Diamond gets washed off and you get washed off. And I think once a person really, really thinks about this, literally your whole life changes.
Yes.
Besides the fact that you get along with everyone else, but guess what? Now you're seeing a beautiful garden, of beautiful people.
Perceive everything differently.
You benefit from it. Because you have this view that you never thought you had. Right? It's like I was in New York. I went to like this restaurant. So it was like in a commercial area. So the back, everyone's trying to think of creating creative space, good space. So what they do, they took the back wall of the restaurant. They wanted to make it a private party room, and they made like a glass window. The problem was that the glass window looked out to someone's lawn that was always unkept. So if the guy took care of his lawn, it was wonderful, right? If he didn't, it looked messy. So what did the guy do? He put up a huge cloth, I don't mean a cloth, but a canvas of a gorgeous scenery with water flows and everything. And guess what? He changed the whole perspective of now the whole back room. It's a false perspective. It's not, there's no waterfalls there, there's no trees there. But what do you think the canvas does? It creates that. So ultimately, when you create a healthy vision of people, who's benefiting now? You're sitting in a garden with all these wonderful people. It's actually healing for yourself. Besides the fact you have to get along with the people.
It's for you.
It's for you.
Rabbi,
Yes. Okay, any questions?
yeah, I still like the way Mossad cleans dirty diamonds. I still like that.
They don't clean them.
Very thorough
Very thorough. cleaning.
and clandestine.
Okay. Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you. Listen, the fact is, if you look the way Israel actually goes to war, there's big debates about it. They go to war the Jewish way. The Jewish way is before you go to war, you have to ask for peace. You have to be careful not to kill anyone, God forbid, unintentionally. The way they go to war, they go literally from house to house. They can come in and they warn them to leave. I mean, it's done very, very respectful, very humanely. Because at the end of the day is, we value life, we value our own lives, and we value other people's lives. We don't go ahead and like kill people and so on and so forth. I mean, everything's done. It was even today. There was like a bunch of, a lot of action going on in Israel today, and it's beautiful. I mean, people send out like my brother happens to be there right now. He sent out pictures of the way they arrest people. They arrest them respectfully. They walk with them nicely, and they're not. Most people do this. You would kill them. And obviously, there's again big debates whether the right thing, the wrong thing. It's irrelevant. The point is, for this conversation, is we have to respect all people. And again, there is rules of war according to Jewish law, what the Jewish way to go to war, and so on and so forth. And as long as you follow the Torah, you're guaranteed to do the right thing. Anyway, so any other questions?
Well, I mean, we've experienced even being on the army base.
Oh yeah, right.
The generals, and when they come in, there is a respect for life. It is different. I mean, the soldiers are there to protect the land, but it's a different. Isn't it a different feeling when they're talking to the soldiers? And I mean,
Yes.
They know that the enemy is the enemy, but it's a human being first, and that's pervasive on the army.
Yes, it's true.
It really is.
It's very true, and it's frustrating because believe me, it's easier to win a war if you didn't have those rules. I wouldn't say it's easier because you don't have God, you sure can't win. But from a war perspective, yes, it's not right. It's not a fear. It's not a fear. It's not a fear fight because we have certain spiritual restraints. But ultimately, look, the fact is that because we don't go do that, look at how many wars we won with a fraction amount of people versus big armies. So ultimately, it really goes both ways. If you sometimes do things which are frustrating, based on like the way other people go fight war, but on the other hand, we have God on our side. If you have God on your side, a few can win many, and all throughout history, that's been the case of the Jewish people. Because listen, the ultimate, whatever. I mean, it's not the whole discussion itself. But the bottom line is, you follow God's plan and God's way, it usually works out.